So good evening and welcome. I'm Dr. Ritu Sethi, Director, League of Artisans. Established in 2022, the League of Artisans, a not-for-profit, works alongside artisans to give voices for a more dignified future for people and planet. By mobilizing the power of co-creation and collaboration and the amplification of artisan voices, we advocate for craft communities and promote artisanal wisdom. We see this as a vital response to global challenges, trusting in the transformational power of this knowledge to create alternative futures. As a new organization, albeit with decades of experience of the founders and the advisors, our core methodology is collaborative, building on partnerships with craftspersons and craft groups, with networks, institutions, civil society organizations, and others to bring wider and deeper impacts to larger numbers. So on behalf of my co-director, Saul Marinucci and Carrie Sommers, and our Artisan Advisory Board, I welcome you all to our fourth webinar that is a run-up to the first ever Leek Textile Week to be held in September. And please do check the link in the chat box and reserve seats in the over 55 events lined up in September week. These webinars are being hosted by us under the umbrella title of Textiles Transformed from Leak to Liberty via India, where we seek to weave the threads of the past into the present, spinning new connections with Indian artisans whose knowledge helped transform the local industry. So what could the connection between Leek and India and natural dye have been? Well, in 2010, the basement of the Botanical Survey of India in Kolkata got flooded in the monsoon rains. And I must interrupt here and say that we have a really heavy rainfall in Delhi and in Kolkata. So our next speaker too is being inundated by rain at the moment. Now, in the basement of the Botanical Survey, there was a steel cupboard that was opened after decades. And inside the cupboard, they found a 15-volume set of natural dye recipes and samples, titled Fabrics Dyed with Indian Dyes by Thomas Wardle. While the paper in these volumes was brittle, the 3,000 samples of dye recipes extracted from 64 plants that were contained in the volume were bright and fresh. These had been systematically collected and documented by Wardle during his time in India in 1885-86. This discovery created a sensation in the natural dye world, as they were one of the 3 sets of these volumes that were extant. The set available with the Botanical Survey has now been digitized, with the knowledge contained in these available online. Meanwhile, on his return to his hometown in Leek, Thomas Wardle continued his work. As one of the consequences of the Industrial Revolution had been that a tsunami of synthetic dyes had been diffused across the world, and both he and William Morris, his close collaborator, made valiant efforts to retain and reintroduce the use of natural colorants. Today, more than a century after their passing, we recognize their efforts as prescient, linking as they do the key issues of our time: the poisoning of waterways, the impact of chemical dyes on our systems, and the symbiotic relationship that slow conscious making has with sustainability and with climate change. The other aspect that for me was far ahead of its time was the respect and appreciation of the artisanal and the linking of ancient wisdom to their present, on which we continue to build our futures. And now, before I hand over to our speakers, just a quick bit of housekeeping and some information. First, thank you for responding to the online poll that was posted at the start. We will be doing the same at the end, and would be grateful if you could give us some suggestions for our future talks. Second, we have had to mute our attendees and shut off their videos. Much as we would like to hear you, please do, however, add your questions, comments, opinions, links in our chat box. And if you have a specific question directed at a specific speaker, do state it, and we will take this up at the end of the talks. And now, on to the main event. And it is my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Bappaditya Biswas. Bappa is one of India's foremost textile experts and has been creating masterly weaves over the last decade and more. His developments have redefined Bengal handlooms and given the textiles of the state a new look and feel. He created the brand Bailu, as well as a store Bailoom in Kolkata. He has traveled the world, studying the traditions of weaving and dyeing, and one of his weaves won the UNESCO Seal of Excellence Award. During the isolating months of COVID-19, Bappaditya worked on studying texts, seeking expert advice, and experimenting with painting with natural dye ingredients like indigo, marigold, hibiscus, and others. Following the chintz technique, further exploring shades, he created paintings on hand-spun, hand-woven khadi cloth. His painted creations have been exhibited across India. I now hand over to Bappa, but I will warn you that given the heavy rains in Kolkata, he is on his phone on 4G. So Bappa, best wishes and over to you.
Thank you very much, Ritu. And thank you for recognizing my work and appreciating my work. I'm really indebted. And today, I'm very happy to be able to share my journey with you all. And so we could start the slides. So I realized my calling only after graduating from college. As I am originally from a business family, I was expected to study commerce, which I did, and then joined my family-owned tea business. But on the side, I started hand painting textiles with acrylic colors. People would see my hand paints and would want them on their saris, scarves, and dupattas. That is what slowly gave me the confidence to think about a career in textiles. Against the wishes of my family, I literally had to run away to Calcutta, planning to get myself enrolled in NIFT, which is a fashion institute in Calcutta. Fortunately, I successfully joined their textile course and began my textile journey, after which I never had to look back. We could go to the next slide. My final graduation project in NIFT Calcutta, where I was assigned to work with a weavers cooperative, and that was a complete disaster because they found my ideas too new and too different for them to handle. But eventually, I managed to convince an individual weaver to work on my designs, and thus I fell in love with the handlooms in the process. The next slide, please. Seeing handlooms being dismantled and sold off as firewood, I eagerly took up the challenge to open new markets for this ancient craft by creating contemporary products that would help sustain it and provide a livelihood to the artisan and many others like him. The next slide, please. After 20 years of working with weavers, I realized the reason for the next generation not wanting to take up the craft, among many others, is that they cannot find any pride in their work. We always look at Indian textiles from a historical lens, never acknowledging what's happening right now. They are made to feel that they are not good enough and that their work is not good enough to compare to the creations of the old. So in 2019, we had this show at the Serendipity Art Festival in Goa, where we created 20 contemporary hand-woven garments. In the slide, you can see 3 of them, finished on the loom and embellished with the age-old traditional extra weft technique known as jamdani. The purpose of this was to bring our artisans out of the shadows of their heritage and show the world what they can still do. The next slide, please. In the year 2020, just after this exhibit at the Serendipity Art Festival, COVID happened and everything came to a standstill. And after so many years during this time of lockdown, I picked up my paint brushes again. The next slide, please. We all are fascinated by the rich and diverse style of Indian textiles, and one such textile is the famous hand-painted palampurs or chins. I had only seen it in museums or read about it in books, and was always enamored by the variety of motifs, the color variations, and the mammoth scale of these paintings. No wonder chins was banned in so many countries, as it was emptying all their coffers. The next slide. Now, colors and moderns were locally sourced. The marigold, hibiscus, and even the alum, which is the modern, was easily found in the market. But what about indigo? Bengal had stopped growing its own indigo after the infamous Bengal of the British East India Company almost 165 years ago. So my next challenge along with chins was also to grow indigo again. COVID helped in this again because nothing much was happening in the villages during that time, and we were able to grow our indigo again. It was such a historic moment. Hearing the misconstrued stigma against indigo about how it was such an evil crop that spoiled the soil, hearing about the weavers, how the villagers believed that I was bringing this great evil to their village, only made me more determined to break this myth. And even though it felt as if we were doing something sacrilegious. Despite all these challenges, we successfully extracted indigo and got the deepest of the blues, the Bengal indigo. The next slide. My tryst with chin started when I had first seen pieces with a collector back in year 2005. Since then, I had been dreaming about learning its mysterious technique. This dream finally came true in the year 2009 when I met Michel Garcia, a French chemist. He opened up this immense, deep well of knowledge like a box of chocolates. He explained the complex chemistry and science behind the dyes and made it sound so within my reach. He helped me believe that, yes, I could do it too. Otherwise, in India, we have created this myth by putting chins on this high pedestal that has become unreachable for everybody. The next slide. So dusting off my old notes from Michel Garcia and armed with my paintbrush, I jumped into this world of hand-painted textiles and natural dyes. I fully utilized the social media, joining several Facebook groups from where I got a lot of valuable and practical advice from practitioners, referred to Rosemary Quill's book on chins, studied and followed Karun Thakur's private collection through his Instagram page, and foremost, closely studied William Morris. It was as if I got a peek into his brilliant mind while he designed his blocks with natural dyes. He knew the challenges that each dye and modern posed and designed their applications accordingly. This was a huge learning opportunity which helped me decipher the nuances of the original Indian hand-painted chins. Now, in the next slides, we are going to just go through the process of the works. So there are three short videos. The first video that we see is where I'm painting the alum mordant with the help of a paintbrush. Normally, it is to be worked with the kalamkari pens. That's why it was called kalamkari. But I use a paintbrush to paint the mordants onto it. The next video you see is the outlining of the motif with the black iron, the ferrous solution, which is thickened with a natural gum and painted onto the fabric directly. The fabrics are before treated with sorry, I'm not, I just forgot the name. I can remember the Indian name, the Hartaki, which is the Myrobalan, sorry. And the third slide is about painting the indigo vat directly onto the cloth. Now, this was a huge challenge because indigo in the olden days was always, the entire cloth was dyed into the indigo vat and the motifs were all blocked by wax, like a batik almost, and the indigo was dyed in the bases and the areas where we wanted the indigo. But here, what I did was I found out a way to paint the indigo vat directly onto the cloth. And the reason behind this was the indigo that I'm growing in Bengal is in such small quantities, and it is so precious that I don't want to waste it making a vat and throwing away the vat later on. So what I do is I create a vat, an organic vat, and then I mix gum onto it, and then I paint the vat directly onto the cloth in a way to ensure that nothing is wasted and I'm not throwing away the vat after that. The next slide. So here we are seeing the contemporary chins that I have been painting for the last 2 years. This was some of the photos over here. We can see the story of Dasavatar, where Vishnu's 10 avatars has been painted, incorporating chins into it. And what I'm heavily inspired by the old chins motifs. So what I do, I study the chins motif and I take the motif and then I rearrange the motifs in my own way. So these are my interpretation of the original chins painting. The next slide. So these are more examples of madder. So here we have basically used the 4 colors, the black, the madder, the marigold, and indigo. So using these 4 colors and just by changing the mordant, varying the intensity of the mordant, the concentration of the mordant, and also by adding various shades of ferrous into the mordant, we can create such many varieties from just these 4 shades of color. The next slide. And yeah, so with this, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bappa. I know how hard you have worked. I know how hard you have struggled to get it right. So I really thank you very much. I know the time was very limited, and I know it would be ideal if we could come and visit you at the workshop. So perhaps that is something we will do next. But thank you very much. And I'm so pleased that your phone has held through, and I hope you'll be with us till the end and will be there
Yes,
to answer the questions that are put
sure,
for you.
sure.
So thank
Thank
you
you.
again. Our
Thank
next
you.
speaker is Dian-Jen Lin. Dian-Jen is a co-founder and CEO of Post Carbon Lab, a biotech company developing sustainable microbial colorations for the textile industry. She's equally an advocate for climate positivity and regenerative design. With more than a decade of professional experience in the design industry and a postgraduate degree in fashion sustainability, she fell in love with biology when she started a collaborative project at the Natural History Museum in London. Her broad skill set, with the innate awareness of the symbiosis between humanity and nature, has shaped her professional trajectory towards ameliorating the status quo through proactive engagement and silo-breaking collaborations. Her transdisciplinary career has awarded her with multiple recognitions throughout the years, such as the Kering Award for Sustainable Fashion 2017, the European Social Innovation Competition 2020, the Renaissance Award 2021, Women in Innovation 2023, as well as media features in The Guardian, Financial Times, Forbes, and Reuters. DJ, over to you. Look forward to hearing you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Ritu, and everybody. Thank you for being here. Can you hear me okay? I hope so. Great. I do feel very belittled and humbled going after seeing his beautiful hand-painted work. So I hope you would be still interested in our work, though we're a young biotech company. We've had 4 years of development, and I'll share my slides with everybody. Thank you. I hope that works well, like we rehearsed. So thank you everybody for being here. Like Ritu's introduction, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Post Carbon Lab. And we started Post Carbon Lab embedding our ethos in our name, which is post carbon, referring to the fact that we do have to live in a world of climate crisis where we need to find solutions more sustainable. And actually, sustainable might not be good enough. We need to find beyond sustainable, meaning it's not just sustaining us, but we actually need to undo all the harms that we have done in the past after Industrial Revolution and after the rightly mentioned synthetics that has been developed. We're digging out more oil and more carbon emissions are being released into the atmosphere. And we started Post Carbon Lab to find post-carbon emissions solutions. So in this context for the textile and polymer industry. And today my talk would be about creating bio-based colors by blending tradition and innovation. And I have been sort of primarily working in innovation, but I'll touch on a lot of the traditional craft and research that I was able to learn actually happily through our Indian collaborator, and I'll introduce their work as well. Thank you. So I think since we touched on the baseline of what our current industry and life is surrounded by, I think from my experience in India, there has been a bit more bio-based colors in the daily lives in Indian culture. But in, say, London, where I'm based, every colors you see with surrounding you on your textile products, in upholstery, in plastics, in ceramics, all of these are petrochemical based. And what that means is that these synthetic colorants have been manufactured with high water and carbon footprints. And these, I'll talk a little bit more about that as well later down in terms of the environmental and health hazards that it has brought onto us without us knowing at all. So I will answer why bio-based colors through my presentation. So the problems we're trying to address here is the fact that the textile and the fashion industry contributes to 10% of all humanity's carbon emissions, which is more than international flights and maritime shipping combined. Imagine that all the clothes that we're wearing is responsible for 10% of all humanity's carbon emissions. And that's not factoring in, say, steel manufacturing, mining, telecommunications, or anything that you thought would be probably really responsible for all the carbon emissions. And in addition to that, industrial synthetic dyeing process contributes to 20% of global water pollution. A lot of it actually happening in developing countries, releasing carcinogens and heavy metals into freshwater ecosystems, polluting drinking waters in places where they don't have the infrastructure of filtering and treating wastewater, which is obviously a health and environmental hazard. And I've recently come across this book that I am not a sponsor, or I'm not getting commissions from promoting this book, but it's called To Die For, How Toxic Fashion is Making Us Sick. It's a very lovely and delightful read without too much technical details. And it stated stories, real life stories of people with Elias about their traumatic experience with colors and chemicals within our clothes that we're wearing. And we are unconscious about what it's doing to us. We thought, oh, maybe because it's from stress, maybe it's because of not eating healthy, or because they thought, oh, we just like to complain about being sick. But no, that's not true. So this is a story about, it started with a story about airplane stewardess who have been issued new uniforms. And these uniforms have been causing them rashes, migraines, memory loss, respiratory failures, as well as lesions, just because of the chemicals that's included in their uniforms. And as to how corporations usually deal with these things, obviously they claim, oh, okay, it was because of a cross-contamination of this chemical called tributyl phosphate, and then gave them a little bit of money for dry cleaning, which does not remove the chemical. And then later on, it's been revealed that this chemical was actually intentionally added from the beginning without knowing the consequences of how it will damage the people's health, the wearer's health. And it doesn't have a limit on its use when it's on textiles. And we very often forget the fact that our skin is the largest organ we have. Whatever you put on the skin, whatever you wear will have an impact, directly, indirectly, in the air we breathe, in the conditions our body is trying to tell us, and especially children. So children who have suffered from, say, undiagnosed eczema, to the fact that several research studies have suggested that synthetic colorants can lead to cognitive development issues and disabilities in children. And these issues are not necessarily highlighted enough in the case where in the way that we're consuming textiles and fashion. And I'm sorry, it's going down a little bit of a dark road, but I want to highlight the importance and the externalities of a lot of things that happened behind our cognitive awareness, and they happen in a lot of them happen in developing countries and happen in closed stores. They work in silos. Nobody talks about it. And actually, there's a story about this journalist when she was trying to promote her book and actually explain the issues that she has come across on national broadcasting stations in the United States. They have rejected her presence and has been blocked on the day of her broadcasting. And that's how I found out this book and the fact that how much synthetic colors or chemical companies are trying to silence us. And I think it's an issue we should all be aware of, nevertheless. So the textile manufacturing industry currently uses more than 8,000 different processing chemicals in the entire process. And if you think about, say, have you heard of tributyl phosphate ever in your life? If you didn't study chemistry, you might have known that, but you might be wearing it. And not to mention just that, do we know enough about what's in our clothes? Do we know enough about what we have been in close contact 24 hours? I mean, okay, maybe you don't wear clothes 24 hours. I don't know if anybody's anti-wearing clothes, and the fact that it's getting really warm these days. But it's important to know that there's a lot we don't know, and we should ask more questions. So in our practice and what we do, we're trying to answer the question of what is the ecological role of textiles, of colors, of fashion. And I think in other people's work, for instance, the previous speaker, he's worked a lot about the cultural side of things, as well as the social, as well as the ecological side of things. And our aim is to, for now, at least what I will get around to talk about, is surrounding the ecological aspect of what we do. So what we do is that instead of using plants or animals, which are the primary color sources in natural dyeing, we use color-producing, color-generating microorganisms. And what we do is that we basically feed these microbes with nutrients ranging from, so there's different groups of microorganisms as well. So there's a group of microorganisms that would emit carbon dioxide. They usually are bacteria, yeast, fungi, or mold, which you need to feed them with sugar. And there's another group which subsists on CO2, light, water, and mineral traces. So we have explored around these very small, invisible microorganisms that actually have embedded the evolutionary wisdom of nature in the past 3 to 5 billion years. And the way we do it is that we basically inoculate, or we grow them in these microorganisms, whether in mass or we grow them with textiles, depending on the desired effect or process. And then we use this method to either extract the colorants to apply onto textiles, or we create a coating on textiles that embeds certain properties. So we do essentially 2 services that we work with textile and fashion, or any textile related businesses that can go into automotive, or that could go into interior or homeware, whatever it may be. And we do microbial coloration, which is to use microbes as a source of color, or we do a photosynthetic coating, which actually absorbs carbon dioxide during the biomanufacturing stage. So instead of digging out more oil and emitting more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere to create colors, which is what synthetic colors do, we grow and feed our microbes with CO2 that we capture from the air to grow colors. So we basically reverse engineered that carbon cycle to find out what we can do to support the textile and the color industry. And these are some of the color references that we have made in our early stage development. So from the top right, you have bacterial colors. At the bottom, the yellow, purpley, and orangey one is made with fungal and yeast colors. On the top, in the middle row, top row, we have colors deriving from microalgae. And at the bottom, this brown, gray one are colors deriving from seaweed. And I have a video of how the microbes look like when they grow, where we feed them with CO2 and water and light. And then they're literally just little green balls if you look at them under microscope. And here is how some of the tie-dye pieces that we did in the early stages. We're much better at them now, but I wanted to show like the development. And in the beginning, we also tried to make small amounts of pigments at small scale. So we used cyanobacteria, microalgae, seaweed, other microbes like fungi or yeast, and then also bacteria. And so showing some kind of extraction, drying process, pigment making. This is how it looks like when we grow the bacteria that produces colors. So They would basically be grown in like a liquid nutrient, and it would contain things like sugar and other traces of minerals to allow them to reproduce. And throughout their evolution, the evolution of these microbes, they have embedded in themselves ways to survive. So in order to allow their survival, they usually produce, a few strains created these colorants, not actually for us to color or to see them, it's for them to protect themselves. So these colorants can have, say, properties of like antiviral, antimicrobial, antifungal properties. And these are basically the pigments or the colorants we end up coloring the textiles with. And so we grow them and you can see them being colored on textiles, and then the outcome can look like something like this. And depending on different types of ways of application and dyeing process, we can achieve something that's very uneven and very regular, or we can achieve something more on the even coloration side. Again, these are our early developments. So this is another process. This is how our textiles are integrated with the microbes when you look underneath the microscope. And this is one of our process where we call the photosynthetic coating. And these are the finished pieces. We've done some printing as well. So the way the photosynthetic coating works is that we would work with photosynthetic microorganisms, and they would be applied, grown, or coated onto textiles in the sort of desirable way you like it. And then in the process of growing them, they would already capture carbon dioxide, and then thus reducing that carbon dioxide. And then when you're wearing the photosynthetically coated garments, you can also choose to care for it like a living plant, where it would be able to continue to sequester more carbon dioxide. And basically kind of, because we emit carbon dioxide. So you would have an interactive carbon cycle with your clothes. This is a concept as well as a pilot that we have done. And we have also noticed that some feedback from the users that through the care routine with sprinkling your garment with water, or providing it adequate light and moisture conditions, your garment can get greener. But this is something probably slightly more difficult for the industry to consider, but it is one of the projects that we have conducted and piloted with some small brands and businesses as well, to see how we can push the textile industry and the fashion industry to think, what is the ecological role of the textiles and the fashion pieces that we wear? And this is a few of the collaborations that we have done with brands and businesses. So this is a beautiful stage performance piece we created for the musician / artist called Sunaina. And this is done with MCQ, which is part of Alexander McQueen, which is a brand in the UK. And we've basically, we made all the colors, the coating, and the Alexander McQueen team take it to created the sort of 3D sculpture-like shape with their couture team. So this is one of the samples. And then another project that we have done is with Olivia Rubens along with Machine A, where we built a in-store incubator that exhibited the microbial coating on textiles, where you could put your clothes inside an incubator, and we embedded a automatic caring system to allow the microbes to continue growing on your textile pieces. Yeah, so some selections of the collection pieces. And then in addition to that, what we have also done is that we created a different process to applying shall I call it surface design on textiles. And this is a process we call bioprinting, where we basically apply, we basically put the microbes along with a binder into a 3D printer, like 3D printer, but it's much more 2D. And it was able to draw lines on the textiles to create like a 3D texture, a bit like an embroidery, but then not really. As you can see, it has a very specific aesthetic. And we've gotten it to, we've developed it to the extent that it was able to create really complicated shapes, though just in one color, for textile surface design. And then because of this piece of work, we've actually been featured in the National Geographic for the bioprinting project. And so above is a kind of a quick overview of the kind of experimental R&D, color, textile finishing, coating work that we have done, a quick overview. And I'd also like to share sort of above the innovation side, as well as the sort of science or any kind of aesthetics products tied to that. I want to share why we're doing it and how we're doing it as well with you. And then later on, we'll talk about how it ties to the traditions. So we were trying to answer what is the ecological role of what we do, because it's very tied to the ecological role of textiles. If we're making sustainable colors and sustainable textile products in a very unsustainable way, which I have seen a lot. You might think it's weird, but people could be selling organic cotton t-shirts dyed with synthetic colors, which then will not biodegrade when you dispose it and at the end of its life. And it's horrible. And then I think there's a whole spectrum that is very tiring to be a consumer today, because if you want to be sustainable, you have to consider all small elements. And a lot of time you try to do something great and you still make mistakes because we simply don't know enough, or simply because the manufacturers, the suppliers actually don't want you to know. And it's a really horrible thing. So I would talk a little bit about how we do it. Our business ethos is regenerative sustainability activism. So we aimed for regenerative beyond sustainability, meaning regenerative, meaning remediating the wrongs that we have done in the past, such as the abundant carbon emissions in the atmosphere. And activism is to create projects like our photosynthetic coating, where we are facilitating a different carbon cycle, facilitating a different interaction between the textile products as well as the users. And dignity, a big part where we think it's overlooked in the fashion industry, where people are maybe paid minimum or below minimum wage, where people who are brands would then justify, say, oh yeah, we're paying them a legal kind of requirement, but the legal requirement doesn't actually provide people with a dignified lifestyle. So these are the two sort of core ethos of what we do, and all the design and business decisions we make are around these ethos. And so because of this, we created a very unique sourcing policy of Post-Carbon Lab. We actually don't like buying stuff. And in London, in the UK, most businesses would just buy things from, say, Amazon. They just order something and it arrives on their doorstep. But these products might have arrived from either long distance shipping, or who knows how they're sustainably or unsustainably or unethically manufactured. And along with the rise of ultra fast fashion like Shein or Temu, these kind of e-commerce platforms, it's getting getting harder and harder for consumers to understand what's behind their buying decision and what's the impact. So we've devised this sourcing policy that we ask every employee to practice, is that we scavenge and forage everything we can find. And what that means that it would reduce and minimize our monetary costs. And it would also require the least from Mother Earth, from nature. And if we can't, we borrow, or we barter and exchange. Or if we spend money, we can rent, or we can buy secondhand. And buying firsthand is our last resort. But something I have discovered when I was in India doing the partnership was that Indians are much more resourceful than people in the UK, let's say. And I'm going to show a picture which can be a little bit uncomfortable for some people, but this is the sort of London waste impact of what happens just right in my neighborhood. So, because we have wild foxes in the neighborhood, and they were just trapped in the plastic bag, and I don't know what happened to them, but that was the end of it. And it's very disheartening for me to see something like this where, you could just walk by and you just throw a plastic bag. Who knows what's going to happen to wildlife in that scenario? So we do something really sort of contrary to what other biotech company would do, is that we would collect waste from the street. It might be weird for people to see in India, where people would throw away fridges, people throw away glass panels, people throw away all kinds of things. And then we would take them home, convert them, take care of them, and turn them into something like this, which is an incubator. And we would use this as the infrastructure for us to grow more microorganisms and foster them inside and taking care by really simple hacking and very simple modifications. It also saves us money as well. And then, so they would look like this in our lab. And then there's another image, so video of our lab of how we're taking care of the microbes. These ones don't have actually colors or microbes in them, but we have made this video just to show you how they look like and how they're grown sort of vertically in our East London-based garage. And so it's just to show you that we made these from like PVC window frame waste, shelving units that we collected from P2P networks where people just dispose of things, and then old windows, for instance. So at Post Carbon Lab, we really promote foraging and reuse resources as much as possible, including very expensive scientific equipments where they actually usually, or manufacturing equipments that would come with a lot of a high carbon or water footprint usually. And we've managed to have 56% of our business infrastructure built from waste. And we still have 11% of the sort of office use or business use items bought through firsthand, which means that we're 89% planet positive, and the 11% of firsthand purchase we need to offset through our biomanufacturing process, where we capture those carbon footprints. So I'll talk a little bit more about traditions and innovations and why I called my lecture about blending tradition and innovations. So I think microbes is a underexplored area of really wonderful color sources that actually is around us. So we would collect bacteria or algae just from the parks, from the streets. You can literally take a cotton swab and you just go around. Sometimes they come to you as well. If I create, say, a bath of suitable conditions with nutrients in it, I'd find microbes coming to me, and then they'd settle in there and then start growing. I mean, I wouldn't recommend for people who haven't sort of look into what you're collecting and growing, but what I want to say is that microbes are actually much more prevalent around us, and it's an underexplored resource that is actually also renewable. So how we blend this with traditions is through research and development. So research, in this case, I think if we think about the past traditions and a lot of the natural dye recipes, similar to what Ritu has mentioned earlier regarding natural dye recipes that have been developed during the arts and crafts movement, as well as what nature actually has embedded in their DNAs in terms of what they can provide and solve a lot of our human-made problems. That's actually all really rich and research. And then we do the development part is by bringing creativity, innovative thinking, and holistic system understanding to see how we can apply these underexplored or understood knowledge to apply them into further development to solve industry's problems, for instance. So we did a project about basically getting better at dyeing and getting better at color creation, getting better at understanding color chemistry. And the journey looked like basically we created more than 3,000 formula, and we conducted more than 900 testing around their performance of, say, how if they can wash okay, do they withstand light, are they okay with perspiration, do they react to pH, if you have wet laundry piled with another piece of wet laundry, does the color transfer or migrate? So we've done a lot of testing for that. And later on, we've obtained 100 or so certifications pertaining to the industry standards that has been used to finally actually just generate 10 shades, which we can confidently say that they are cost competitive against synthetic colorants, and they are industrially compatible with existing machineries and infrastructure. And then they are they have high performance. They wouldn't come off if you just wash them, or if you sweat, it wouldn't change color. So it took us a long time to kind of understand how do we conduct all these sort of filtering considerations to strategize our color R&D and development. R&D stands for research and development, sorry. So, and then the unique part is that our colors, our microbial-based colors, are formulated with what we call green chemistry, which is the baseline we use. Sometimes people use green chemistry and it still involves a, say, less harmful solvent, which is still a solvent, which is still petrochemical-based. So green chemistry is just the baseline. And then we mostly work with bio-based agents, which they are plant-derived or microbial-derived. And these are additives. Some of them I think mentioned, say like alum. No, alum is mineral-based, and which I have here as in the non-heavy metals. Or we would use things like tannins. So popular natural dye recipe options that we have referenced to create the 3,000 formula to start sort of narrowing down the recipes. And then finally, we have these 10 shades, which are cost competitive. The most difficult thing is to get them cost competitive, because synthetic colors are dirt cheap. And the industry expects you to have really high performance, but they don't want to pay more. They will say, I can find really cheap ones, why would I pay for this? And you say, well, your colors is actually damaging the planet, damaging the people. And then they say the consumers doesn't know that. So it's a very toxic cycle, and I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done. Anyway, so this is our climate positive microbial colors that we've launched this year, and creating a summer color palette, which is cost competitive, compatible with machinery, has high stability, has industrial standards of wash, light, performance. Is free from fossil fuels. There's no fossil fuel involved in the formulation or creation of the recipes. And the production of these colors are carbon negative. And these are done on organic cotton knits with our partner. And so we ultimately, you see how much we have improved. So we've basically launched these little tiny t-shirts and dresses and shirts in the Future Fabrics Expo this year, to share with the industry stakeholders in terms of what microbial-based carbon negative colors can look like. And these, what some people then come to us and say, oh, this looks not very dark, or they're quite pale. And the reason being that when you want darker colors, you would need higher concentrations or more formulating agents to go into the textiles, which would then increase cost. Unless you use really bad petrochemical derived agents, which still happen. You can still buy, and we see in the innovation space where people would say, oh, this is naturally dyed. Say, for instance, if they're doing it at scale, or if they're doing it in a global operation, and then it's formulated with petrochemical additives, which is obviously not a great thing, but people don't necessarily talk about that. And then Here I have a picture of, on the left, you have the traditional madder recipes. So how you, obviously it creates a red. And then on the right, you have our microbes growing and bubbling in their raw forms of colored soup, let's say. So we've referenced and learned a lot from traditional natural dyeing practices and recipes, and also applying scientific and new modern methods to characterize them, to conduct performance testing on them, and to understand the chemistry, as well as how to improve and enhance them without compromising the sustainability of why we started doing this. And this is I'd like to introduce the partners that we work with, which is True Tone Inc. And they are they're based in Ahmedabad in India. They have more than 20 years of natural dyeing, experience. And so here you can see in their Ahmedabad-based facility where they're doing natural dyeing with herbal and plant-based materials at scale, where, for instance, they can dye something like 500 meters of textiles in one day. And the most difficult thing in natural dyeing and making it industrializable is the fact that if you're familiar with natural dyeing process, you would have a moldenting stage, you'd have maybe a dyeing stage, or you would have a fixation stage, and you'd also maybe need to finish it or modify it. So it requires 3 to 4, even sometimes 6, 7 stages if you want to achieve a certain depth of shades. And the fact is also that some mordants, you need to soak them for days and you need to cure them, and it would take a very long time. So that doesn't work for the industry. The industry say, I have this massive machine, we dye 8 tons every month, and you have, for every piece of textiles, you have 6 seconds to go through the industrial machinery process to get the color. So if your color takes more than, say, 6, 8 seconds, depending on the machine, to take the color, it wouldn't be suitable for their application and what they're looking for. So what our room, which is the founder of True Tone Inc., has done in the past 20 years is to innovate around how that process can be changed. And that's why we partnered with them, because it's really difficult to find somebody have a similar industrial understanding and knowledge, but is also only working with bio-based colorants and not fake with petrochemical additives, etc. So we work with them as our manufacturing partner, and they're we have to thank them for the development that we have done so far. And another initiative also in India and Mysore that we think is really relevant and very, very important to promote is Color Ashram. What they do is that in the industry, in the public, we all know that people don't know a lot about what's in their clothes, like the question I was asking about processing chemicals. And Color Ashram's goal and mission is to educate and promote natural colors and how you apply them, how you integrate them, whether that's in your personal life, in your brand, if you're starting a small fashion brand, or if you just want to know a bit about how the color chemistry works. They host workshops, they have DIY toolkits. There's many ways you can engage with them. And because we're the partners of Color Ashram and True Tone Inc., if you would like to get in contact with them, we would be your channel if you're based in Europe or in the UK, so that we can support, say, either the communications or the import paperwork, custom paperwork, something like that, so that people in the UK and EU can also learn from the traditional Indian natural dyeing techniques and the heritage behind these recipes. And then if you're thinking, why don't we have something in the UK? Then here is another initiative that's based in London, which is called the Dyers Circle. And the Dyers Circle is about developing 21st century system thinking while preserving indigenous techniques to allow everyone to access dye education anywhere in the world. And they promote, well, we as well as Leek, but today I'm presenting Post Carbon Lab. Dyers Circle is something I supported the foundation with Jackie, who is the founder. So to promote cultural exchange, to recognize indigenous practices as innovative and not primitive. I think this really sort of resonates with what the previous lecturer talked about. And we want to build a collective repository of tinctorial knowledge. And here you can see a color wheel of all the different shades that's been created through botanical sources. And finally, I'd like to end with something that we're doing and to kind of resonate with what we've talked about today is that we're hosting a masterclass of biocolors on the language, on the green chemistry, on the process in London at the London College of Fashion, co-hosted with Color Ashram. So I have a QR code here, or you can search on Eventbrite. It's available also through online participation if you'd like to. And because I'm so glad and honored to be involved in the League of Artisans and being able to present today, I'd like to give you all, if you would like to sign up for a 10% promo code discount. And I'd love to, I think the more I learn about natural dye, and even just from the previous speaker's presentation, the more I learn about it, the more I know there's more that we still don't know. And I still need to do more research and learning. And I think the same process is not necessarily happening in the industry, which is why they continue doing what they know. And it is what's damaging the planet. So we created this space, this masterclass, to have those very necessary conversations. So thank you, everybody, for your time today with me. And I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, yes,
Thank
it's also
you so
available.
much, DJ. Really. You know what is, first of all, I congratulate you on your journey. Remarkable.
Oh, thank you.
Remarkable to think so deeply, connect the past, connect tradition with cutting edge science. But what really resonated with me and what has bothered me for a long time is, while we all know that we should be wearing natural dyed products and how good it is for us, it is elitist. You have to be able to afford it. And therefore, when you use the word cost effective in the same price points as what synthetic coloring is doing, and doing it to scale, I really feel that this is a learning you have to spread. And I know that it's commercial enterprise, but I do hope there's a part of it that will spread this knowledge so that it actually diffuses and makes natural dyed products easily available at prices that are more affordable to lots of us. So thank you again.
100%. Yes.
So thank you again. And there are many questions for you at the end, but we will now move on to our next speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ritu, thank you.
Thank you. So our next, we have two speakers next. We have Ojasvi Peshawaria and we have Pinky Devi. Ojasvi heads the arts and the craft-based outreach program at Neela House in Jaipur, where she works on community engagement and capacity building in natural dyeing. Neela House is a not-for-profit organization and is dedicated to preserving and celebrating India's heritage of traditional crafts with a specific focus on ecologically sensitive indigenous craft practices, principally natural dyeing, hand-spun and hand-woven textiles. And it has positioned itself at the intersection of craft, design, sustainability, and community empowerment. And Pinky Devi has been associated with them since 2021. She's a spinner and dyer from Malikpur village in Rajasthan. And at the age of 21, she learned cotton hand spinning on the Bardoli Charkha or spinning wheel from her village elders. She's been associated with Neela House, and with their support, she learned the arts of natural dyeing and in her practice has produced hand-spun yarn in a variety of shades, including indigo. So I hand over first to Ojasvi, and then Ojasvi will be in conversation with Pinky Devi. So, Ojasvi, over to you.
Thank you, Ritu, for having us here today. I'd like to begin with thanking our previous speakers, Bappaditya for sharing such a gorgeous body of work, employing natural painting with the natural dyes and painting chains, and Dian-Jen for such a detailed body of research. I would begin the presentation with the journey, Indigo revival journey of Malikpur over the years. Malikpur is a remote village nestled away from the city of Jaipur, a quiet gem with a long history of plain weave textiles, a fiber to fabric ecosystem where men practice handloom weaving and women spun cotton fiber into yarn by hand. About 25 years ago, all that was produced in this village was either sold to the local market or to the khadi institutions. In 2020, Neela began collaborating with the community of weavers in Malikpur. In 2021, with the assistance of senior craftspersons from the community, we were able to revive hand spinning and support weavers with design inputs, creative interventions, and market opportunities. In 2023, we invited natural dye expert Jagada Rajappa to conduct natural dye training for weavers of Malikpur. The goal of this was to enhance their self-sustaining ecosystem through value addition of color. During this period, many spinners visiting the community center expressed interest. However, the lengthy and laborious process of natural dyeing did not appeal to most spinners. Only 1 out of 10 continued practicing and experimenting with natural dyes. Today, Manish, as you see in the images above, has mastered indigo maintenance, wax setup, and dyeing. In March 2023, 3 spinners participated in natural dye training, and their shared stories of their experience sparked interest among many others in the community. I would like to begin the Indigo story with a beautiful quote by the dye practitioner Manish, where he says, "Natural dye is about precision and calculation, but indigo requires a touch of emotion." In May 2023, we conducted a 6-month hand-holding support training for 6 more spinners to assess their commitment and enthusiasm for the art of dyeing, art of natural dyeing, and natural indigo. During its course, we continued to do a lot of experiments. Since the women were spinners prior to their dyeing knowledge, they dyed cotton slivers and spun it into shaded yarns as a form of fun activity. They also explored shibori stitching techniques while referring to the book Stitch Shibori, Technique, Innovation, Pattern, Design by Jane Cadell. Similarly, they explored tie and dye in yarns and clamp dyeing techniques for sari designs. In the last 1 year, the relentless effort of the women in natural dyeing and indigo has been appreciated by many visitors, including experts. Looking at their accomplishments, many have shared with them some of their tips and tricks of maintaining indigo, creating the vat, as well as the post-treatment that the indigo requires. Indigo only came to a full circle in the lives of women and Nila when we explored farming, indigo farming, in 2022. Gendalji, a farmer from the weaver family, collaborated with us to grow indigo in Malikpur. In this pilot, we explored various sowing and irrigation methods to assess indigo growth in the arid and semi-arid climate of Rajasthan. We adopted two planting techniques, ridge plantation with a drip irrigation setup and broadcast seeding with irrigation sprinklers. We grew two varieties of seeds, Cassia Tora, image on the left, and Indigo ferratinctoria, image on the right. The weavers carried out the extraction process of indigo that year. The crop was harvested 12 inches above the ground and soaked in water-filled drums for approximately 24 to 30 hours for fermentation. The leftover leaves were removed and put into a compost pit. The solution, as you see green in the image on the left, was oxidized using baskets with the up and down movement, and the sedimented indigo was hung to dry. In 2023, after the women had completed a few months of training in dyeing, we conducted phase 2 with the women. The dyer community was exposed to the indigo plant. The land was plowed and prepared for sowing, and the women created traditional cow dung pods, locally called mangori, for the seeds to stick to. In phase 2, indigo was washed before the steeping process and oxidized in 2 batches, one with lime and one without. So the image on the right shows you the color of the indigo foam. With lime is the one above and without lime is the one below. This experiment was to gauge the purity and strength of indigo. The indigo pulp obtained from this entire process was formed into cakes and used in community vats later in the year. Under the guidance of M. Anbalagan, a 4th generation indigo farmer from Tindivanam, Chennai, helped us carry out to phase 3 of the indigo farming project this year. We sowed 6 kgs of indigo ferratinctoria seeds in April and June to assess the optimal season to grow indigo. Anbalagan, along with his assistant Pachiappan, taught us the traditional method of oxidation, which is performed by men standing in the extraction tanks. Unlike our previous method of using baskets, this technique involves using feet to push the solution from one end of the tank to another, pumping in the oxygen. This method was optimal also because it was done manually. The rhythm and the control of the generation of the indigo particles being formed was in control of the people who were doing it in a rhythmatic fashion. With years of hard work, hidden trials, love, and effort, we have successfully created a progressive mark of indigo in the community of Malikpur. Thank you. I will be removing the presentation now. Maybe we can start with the conversation. Rituji, should we start with the
Yes,
conversation?
please. Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to have a conversation with Pinky Ji, the spinner and dyer from Malikpur. First, I will ask her the questions in Hindi, so she has the time to correlate the answers and be able to speak. In the meantime, I will translate the question for all of you in English and then translate once she gives me the answer. पहले राजस्थान और गुजरात में ज्यादातर पुरुष रंगाई का काम करते थे और अब आपको कैसा लगता है जब आप सब महिलाएं एक साथ मिलकर इंडिगो की रंगाई करते हैं और इंडिगो का काम करते हैं. Natural dyeing was predominantly practiced by men in Rajasthan and Gujarat. With such a gendered history around the art of dyeing, how do you, as a group of women, feel about this shift?
हाँ, राजस्थान में ज्यादातर पहले पुरुष ही रंगाई का काम करते थे और करते भी थे और कर रहे भी हैं. और अब हम महिलाएं रंगाई का काम कर रही हैं. पहले कताई करती थी, अब रंगाई कर रही हैं. और अब सब हम प्राकृतिक रंगों से रंगाई कर रहे हैं. इंडिगो की खेती भी करते हैं साथ साथ. इन सब से हम महिलाओं की आज उन्नति हो रही है और हमें देखकर लोगों में और रंगाई सीखने की दिलचस्पी दिखाई दे रही है.
So, as she says, indigo and other natural dyes were mostly practiced by men in the community. And now these women who were priorly working in spinning, hand spinning of cotton yarn, are also cultivating indigo, are also dyeing using natural indigo. And with this effort of doing so, they are able to progress in the community, be able to move forward and have the experience of others. And this activity of learning all these skills has also interested many artisans in the community, many women artisans in the community to learn indigo dyeing or natural dyeing. अपने कुछ अनुभव बताएं जिनमें लोगों ने आपको इस राह पे चलने के लिए प्रोत्साहित किया है. Also, please share some experiences experiences where you've been supported and appreciated to be a women's group practicing indigo dyeing and farming.
अभी कुछ हफ्ते पहले गुजरात से खमीर के डायरेक्टर आए थे. उन्होंने जब हमें इंडिगो डाई करते देखा तो वो बहुत खुश हुए और उन्होंने कहा कि हमारे यहाँ पर केवल पुरुष ही रंगाई करते हैं. एक बार आप गुजरात आओ और हमारी महिलाएं जो कताई कर रही हैं उनको आप प्रकृति के रंगों की रंगाई करना सिखाओ.
A few weeks back, we were honored to have guided by the director of Kamir, who saw the women in the community center dyeing indigo, and he had this remark to make that most men in Kutch are practicing indigo dyeing and other natural dyes, and he has invited the women who are spinners in Kutch to continue to promote and to teach the community natural dyes and indigo dyeing. I have another one question for her. अब जब आपने इंडिगो का पूरा प्रोसेस देखा, खेती से बीज बोने से पूरा प्रोसेस देखा और आपने रंगाई भी की वो इंडिगो से, तो उसमें से आपको सबसे अच्छी प्रक्रिया कौन सी लगती है और आपको इंडिगो में दूसरे रंगों से इंडिगो में क्या ज्यादा दिलचस्पी है? So, having seen the indigo process from seed to dye, what parts draw you the most in the indigo chain? And why is indigo that one color that excites you or interests you more than the other natural dyes?
इंडिगो में सबसे अच्छा जो हल्का आसमानी से, ये इंडिगो कलर जो हल्का आसमानी से लेकर और गहरा डार्क जैसे रात के समान कलर देता है इंडिगो। और इसमें कटाई बुआई सब अच्छी लगती है।
So she makes the comparison for why indigo inspires her is because the spectrum of color that you can achieve with indigo is from a light blue sky color to a midnight blue of the sky. So she's comparing the spectrum of indigo to the colors of the sky. और इस प्रक्रिया में आपको जो इंडिगो बनाने की प्रक्रिया है, आपका बीज बोने से पौधे का देखभाली से और रंग निकालने की प्रक्रिया, उसमें आपको क्या अच्छा लगता है? I've asked her in the process of creating indigo from the plant to the dye and the dyeing, what excites you in that transition of indigo formation?
खेती में जब इंडिगो की पत्तियां काट कर पानी में डालते हैं तो उसका कलर ग्रीन हो जाता है, हरा। और जब उसका निष्कर्षण करते हैं तो वो धीरे धीरे हरे से नीला होने लगता है और उसमें इंडिगो आता है। और इसमें जैसे लस्सी करने से घी उत्पन्न होता है, वैसी प्रक्रिया इसमें है।
So what she says is that the exciting part of the transition is how when the leaves are steeped in water, they turn green. And from that aeration, you create a blue, a darker blue, which creates the particles of indigo. This process is what she compares to how they make buttermilk. They churn buttermilk to make ghee, which is to make ghee for food and home.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Ojasvi.
much.
Thank you, Pinky Devi. That is really wonderful. Thank you to all the speakers. We have time for just 2 questions. So can I request Bappa and DJ to turn on their videos and their audios? So, and in fact, the 2 questions, one is for DJ and the other is for Bappa. And the question to DJ is actually an extension of what I had asked earlier. That can the work you're doing with microbes, can it be done to scale? Can it be done like chemical dyeing? And can it be done in any part of the world, or is there some specific conditions that are required?
There's something very interesting. There's another company in India, I think they're doing microbe dyeing, microbial pigments or something like that as well. And I thought India definitely actually has a geographical advantage than us doing it in London, because the microbes, similar to how, if you think about how tropical fish looks much more colorful versus, say, fish from colder areas. So actually, because of the colder climate, because of the harsher climate, you naturally get more vibrant colored microorganisms, which then evolved through evolution to look more brighter and more vibrant in the natural environment. So actually, India is a really great place. I've also spoken to people in South America, and I think they agree that because of similar to how you work with natural dye with different plants, different plants in the UK, different plants in India, you generate different hues of colors. And there's a reason that people keep coming back to indigo, because it's like so strong. And then that is quite native to the warmer climate. And in terms of scalability, I think scalability is a really, really big question. So if you think about how synthetic colors had, I don't know, since like the 1895, I think, the most they developed the synthetics and kickstart a whole industrial color revolution, and people invested billions and I don't know, trillions, gazillions to build the infrastructure to allow that to happen, because they see profit. and they didn't care about nature as much. So that is something synthetic color industry is working with. But the natural color industry, I think we are still at the precipice of learning how to conduct the similar efficiency, the similar sort of scaling concept, and the similar infrastructure that we might need, as well as the thinking to be able to build that, even though it is a long-running heritage practice and it is wonderful and has so much potential. Getting to the stage of standardization, getting to the stage of globalization, and then costing down, like kind of talk about what Ritu you mentioned in terms of cost, that all requires a different skill set. And we know, say for instance, mastering indigo, like what the previous speaker already talked about, it takes a very, very long time, and you only get blue. And people want, oh, today I want to wear blue, tomorrow I want to yellow, tomorrow, the day after I want to wear all different colors. People don't necessarily know that for bio-based colors to really mature and master, it takes time. You speak a different language. It comes out green, but it's going to be blue. And if you talk to a chemist, a synthetic chemist, that's going to happen. They're like, oh, okay, I don't know how to work with that. So it's a very, very different process. And I think that's why what we're doing, what Color Ashram's doing, what Dye Circle's doing, and why we're having this conversation, is that it's a different thinking method, actually. And if we actually tackle that by doing more outreach, having really wonderful opportunities like this talk to discuss this, we can get there. Because also, you know, we don't have that much time. We need to have better alternatives. So thank you.
Thank you, DJ. You're right. The clock is ticking. So the next question is to Bappa. Bappa, in the early 1900s, there was an account of an officer who went to Kalahasti. And when he saw the chintzes being made there, he felt that they just weren't good enough because they had started painting on the indigo. And he was very disappointed that the old method of waxing and then dipping into indigo had been lost. But in your work, you're finding that you can do a great job with painting on indigo. So could you tell us a little bit about that and the shades you're achieving by painting on and not going through the wax resist process?
Yeah, so I consciously avoided the wax resist process, because if you use the wax resist process means you're adding on much more time to the piece, because then you have to first do the outline, and you have to then wax the areas where you don't want the indigo to come in. And so that's another step altogether, which adds on a week, 10 days or 15 days to the piece itself. And also the fact that I work from a very small studio here in the city in Calcutta, where I don't have much space, but if I'm using a batik, I need more space to boil the wax, take it off, and then the wax clogs on the drains. So there are a lot of practical issues of using a wax. I would need a much more bigger space, maybe out in the open, to open up and dry the thing, and then also drainage of the and so I steered away from that, and I developed. So what I do to achieve various shades of blue through the vat is that I create different concentration of vats. So so if I want a lighter blue, I create a very light vat, very lightly concentrated vat. Then I go, if I want a medium blue, I do a little more more concentrated, and then I mean, similarly, if I want a very darker blue, I paint with a very concentrated deep vat. And also indigo is if I want a very dark indigo, I paint it on layers. Say for instance, I've painted it once, washed it with the madder, then it comes back on the table again. Then I paint the indigo again and the modern for the next color. So if I'm not happy with the intensity of the blue, I keep painting on top after every wash. And that's how I achieve the blue color. And the beauty is when I'm painting with other moderns, they it has to be done in stages, and it has to come from darker to lighter shade. Like, say for instance, I do the black first, then black and indigo I do it together, and then I do the madder, the red, and then I come to the yellow, the marigolds, and then I come to the grays, if I have grays in so the gray is the last. Otherwise, what happens, the modern painted areas, they keep on attracting the color. And if I'm doing a lighter, say I've done the gray first, and then I dip the fabric in madder, then the gray areas will change into like a maroon, because the gray has the mordant in it, which will attract the madder red color and change the color. So that's also a process. But what happens, indigo doesn't react with any of these. So when I'm painting indigo in the first stage along with the black outlines, and I mean, no matter how many dips I keep dipping it into various dye baths, the indigo stays constant. So it gives me a possibility, if I want to paint again and again on top of the same indigo to get a darker shade, I can do that.
Thank you, Bappa. I'm ready for a masterclass anytime you want to hold it. And I'm sure many of the people in the audience are.
Thank you.
So I
Thank
just
you.
want to say that this has been an amazing hour. And what I so admire about all the speakers today is their commitment, their pushing of boundaries, and the creating of the link between creativity, the science of natural dyes, innovative thinking, and industry. So I congratulate all of you, and 3 cheers to all of you. But we have run out of time. And before I again say all my thank yous, I want to remind you that we continue to expand our programming at League of Artisans. So do continue to look at our website, our Instagram, social media, and also do sign up to our Artisan Manifesto. The link has been shared. Please also check the 55 plus events we are having at the Leek Textile Week at end September. It would be marvelous to see you all there. And last but not the least, a big thank you to our supporters and funders for underwriting the webinars and the Leek Textile Week, the National Lottery through the Arts Council England, and the funding and support from Outside Arts and from Neela House Lady Bamford Foundation. A thanks again to my wonderful panelists and all the attendees for being such a marvelous and attentive audience and for responding to the online polls. And a big thank you to my co-directors, advisory board, and all my colleagues. So thank you all, and we will all stay in touch. I know we cannot lose touch now. So thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.